You know what the most common question is that we get in the Lowcountry of South Carolina? How's the market? Today we're going to get through the top 7 metrics that we track on a regular daily basis to make sure that buyers and sellers truly understand what the mood of the market is. So let's get after it. Hey everybody, today we're excited about tackling one of the most common, really most basic questions that we get from buyers and sellers. It's simple, how's the market? And it's not a really simple answer, and we want to kind of delve at that a little bit, because if you do try to keep it simple, like, well, anecdotally, right, Chris, like it kind of depends on who you ask and when you ask them. If you ask any given agent, like, how's the market, and they just sold 4 houses, they're probably like, market's great,
Yeah.
And you might ask 10 other agents, like, how's the market? Like, it's not great at all. So it kind of also depends on the neighborhood where people are working, and also depends on sort of what's happening in each segment of the market. So today we just kind of want to break that down. We want you to understand how we come to understand what we call the mood of the market. Okay, what is the mood of the market? Like, what's happening out there? How are buyers responding? How are sellers responding? And what is the health of the marketplace that kind of frames that? So let's get after kind of a series of things that we think are the major metrics that we sort of track on a daily basis. The first, I talk about it all the time. I feel like I'm always the guy saying, now guys, the monthly housing supply is X. And if you've been watching these videos on and on, you know that between 3 months and 6 months is a balanced market. Doesn't really favor sellers over buyers or vice versa. Under 3 months, it's definitely a seller's market. Over 6 months, it's a buyer's market. That's a function of, their pace of sales against the amount of inventory that we have. So monthly housing supply, we always talk about that. We're always going to continue to report that on a monthly basis. So you understand that's the number one to go to, just so you look at that from really, Chris, like a global perspective, right? Because it's important to understand monthly housing supply depends on the data you're studying. Right. Monthly housing supply in neighborhood A might be different from neighborhood B, and definitely would be different for the global market overall. But it's a way to look at it and say, what is the overall global mood or health of the market? Monthly housing supply is the first one. So let's go after what the next one is.
Well, the monthly housing supply, that's a great one. If you just want one, that's it, because the other ones kind of fall into place with that. But I like setting expectations as to how long a listing has been sitting on the market, the cumulative days on market, or just the days on market, and what that looks like. And that's a really interesting metric, because one, it does set some expectations. If cumulative days on market is increasing, what does that mean? If it's shrinking, what does that mean? And sometimes you can see that reflect a market changing, because if listings are sitting on the market for a long period of time, but then the market starts clicking and those listings get absorbed, what happens to the days on market? It grows, because all of a sudden you throw in another data point with a large number. So that is one that you don't look at independently of the other metrics that we're going to talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
But that is one that's pretty interesting to watch and monitor. And one thing I want to add to that is cumulative days on market versus days on market. Every MLS might be a little bit differently, but if someone takes a listing off the market for 90 days, that resets.
Right. So it goes
okay, that resets. So keep that in mind. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is if folks like to track prices. What are prices doing? Well, a lot of times we hear people talking about the average sale price, but I don't really like looking at average sale price.
Sure.
A better gauge than the average sale price is to look at the median sale price. The median sale price really reflects kind of what the middle, the guts of the market is doing, and it ignores the extremes. It ignores outliers. I mean, you don't want to make a decision based on an outlier, whether high or low.
Which means like a $20 million sale, right?
Of course.
That's going to throw this data off.
That's true. And interestingly enough, I've seen the MLS have incorrect data going into this. They might do a test listing or something like that. Well, guess where that data gets populated?
Right.
And it might be 0 days on market, or 1,000 days on market,
right.
or a
huge price
or a low price.
Yeah.
So you got to really watch those things. But the median really helps look at that.
Well, talking about pricing too, is that so important, is that one of the things that we're constantly tracking is, in a hot market, we always still talk about COVID, because it was probably the quintessential hottest market we've ever seen. You never saw a price reduction during COVID, because something sold so quickly, hours on the market. You go to a much slower market, go back to 09 through 19, a much slower market. daily, hourly, almost, you would see price reductions. So the frequency of price reductions is also telling us how the mood of the market, as I said, like how sellers are feeling. Are they feeling a little anxious? Are they feeling like, gosh, it's not selling right away?
Right.
Buyers aren't showing up. There's not enough showings, etc. What do I need to do to accelerate this transaction that I want to have happen? Maybe you need to do a price reduction. So I think that one's really important. And the other one, just in terms of another data point, is sales price to list price ratio. Okay, and we talk about this each month. I'm declaring that. Again, during COVID, over 100%. Now we're in that mid 97 kind of range. And that has sort of been steadily, not aggressively, but steadily settling down. And it's really important for us to kind of consider that. And if you combine those 2 points,
Yes.
price reductions and sales price list price ratio, you have this thing that's not as commonly tracked, which is the sales price to original list price, which, when we report sales price list price ratio, I'm just reporting the last known stated list price and then what it sold off of that.
Right.
But what we're missing is that original list price, which might be something that was priced higher and maybe it had 3 price adjustments. So we look at that internally, and it's important as agents that we do that. That data point isn't as publicly populated out in the world.
Right, right. And here's an interesting one that we like to do, and this creates an opportunity for agents to talk to each other and to learn stories and to have your ear pressed to the ground and that sort of thing. But what kind of chatter are you hearing out there? What kind of buyer feedback are we hearing? And that's the great thing about being kind of in a team environment like we're in. We can talk to our other agents and understand what buyers are saying and how quickly are they acting and how particular are they on things like condition and, oh, I don't want to do that. In a hot market, the chatter is buyers are just getting anything they can.
Yeah.
And finding ways of getting property. When the market slows down, balanced, or turns more into a buyer's market, buyers are getting a little more picky about it.
And I want to say, like we call that word on the street.
Yeah.
So when we have our sales meetings, I say, okay, all right, guys, I've started out. What's the word on the street? What are you hearing from buyers? What do you hear from sellers? What are the stories? What are the other agents in the market saying? But I think it's important as you talk about that, you picking up on chatter, and we're studying the market. We're trying to understand how is the market. You're doing a lot of outreach outside of these four walls to understand what the other agents and the other agencies are experiencing.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Learn from other examples. Learn from other transactions. Learn from other agents and other interactions out there. And don't just rely on what's happening right there personally with you and your team. But so a lot of phone calls and a lot of talk, and that's great. But let's end with something, because we could go on and on. We could talk for 2 hours on this stuff, and I know y'all probably don't want to watch this for 2 hours. But I think the last thing that we can end on is what I like to track, and I coin it the gap analysis. Okay, that's a Collins Group Realty kind of term. You're not going to see that anywhere else, but AI might pick it up now. I don't know. But anyway, the gap analysis. But that's where we track new listings versus the pending sales. And we watch that trending, like we'll do it on an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. If new listings, if the trending's up here and the pending sales are down here and that gap is widening, well, we're headed towards a buyer's market. But if new listings start going this way and that gap starts getting narrower, or it starts to cross like that, then that's where you're getting into your seller's market. So that gap analysis is really cool, because you can track that over a long period of time, and it's very consistent usually. It really shows you the direction of the market. And so that's one of the ones that we like to use.
I love that. I love that you created that. And guys, so that's it. So asking the question is simple, and maybe it's easy just somebody on the street to answer, anecdotally, like, oh, the market's good, or the market's bad, or whatever it is. But I think it warrants a deeper dive. I think it warrants these major metrics to understand it, especially if you're making big decisions. Is this a good time to buy? Should I be waiting a little bit? Is this the best time to sell? Should I be waiting a little bit? That's when these things come into play. So we just appreciate the opportunity to kind of boil it down, break it down, and kind of let you understand the way we're looking at these things behind the scenes. And we hope this one's been good for you guys. We'll talk to you soon.